Hello and welcome to this pattern recognition video. So today, how to improve pattern recognition in chess. I've had this series, or I just started a series of pattern recognition videos, and maybe this one should have been first. But especially for beginners, how do you improve pattern recognition? And if you don't even know what pattern recognition is, well, that's being able to see common patterns in chess and kind of just knowing them as soon as you see them. The faster you can recognize these common patterns, the quicker you can play, the quicker you'll see tactics and checkmates. So, how do you improve your pattern recognition in chess? Well, one common way is to just do puzzles. And you probably don't want to just, do random puzzles all the time. A better way to improve your pattern recognition in chess is to get a series of puzzles or a group of puzzles. You could start, with something small like 50 or 100, but let's say 50. You take those 50 puzzles and you want to pick ones that are easier to begin with, depending, what level you're at in chess. As you become stronger with your skills in chess, you can pick more difficult puzzles. But especially if you're a beginner, just start with some easy puzzles and, maybe a group of 50 of them, and just go through those puzzles multiple times. So the first time, just go through them nice and slow. Maybe don't even time yourself. And just try and solve each puzzle. Then once you've gone through all those puzzles, and also if you have trouble with one, try and figure it out as much as you can without looking at the answer. Try to calculate as much as you can in your head, and then, if you can't solve it, then look at the answer. And what you want to do is go through this group of puzzles, whether it's 50, 100, or more, to start out more easily. Maybe pick a smaller number, go through them, and then go through them a second time, but this time time yourself. Maybe pick 5 minutes or less. And if they're really easy and you can solve them quickly, you can reduce that time. But let's say you have a 5-minute time limit. You go through the 50 problems using 5 minutes or less. Then you go through them a third time and cut the time in half down to maybe 2.5 minutes per problem. And then you keep doing that. And there is a book that I have not read. I think it's called maybe the Woodpecker Method or something. I forget the name. But it's basically the same as another book that I've read where they talk about going through the patterns about 7 times. Usually if you look at something about 7 times, that is a pretty good number for it to be burnt into your long-term memory. So what you want to do is pick a set of problems. So that's what I'm going to do here today. Maybe I'll only do 20, but I've picked easy problems, and you can go through these problems with me. And maybe I'll try to talk less while we're solving these. That way you can concentrate on just getting through the problems. But you go through these problems, take your time, then go back and go through them again. And this time with some kind of time limit, 5 minutes or less. And then, cut your time in half, maybe down to 2.5 minutes or less. And then maybe 2 minutes, then 1 minute, and slowly reduce your time down so that the 7th time that you're going through these problems, you're only giving yourself about 10 seconds or less. And by then, you should be able to solve most or all of these problems in that short amount of time because the patterns are starting to be burnt into your memory. So we might as well start here. This first problem, if you've been looking at it here, it's probably been about 5 minutes or so. So I'll try and do 20 problems for you. Okay, so pause the video at any time if you need more time to think. You know, like I said, the first time you go through the problems, take your time, 5 minutes. You know, try to do them in about 5 minutes or less. And these are easier problems, which is important. You don't want to pick puzzles that are too difficult for you, especially when you're starting out, because you want to start with the basics, like easy tactics. And what I've done here is pick tactics that are rated, you know, like 500 to 1,000. So easy tactics, and they're all random. Now, if you want to focus on one particular type of pattern, you could try and find a bunch of puzzles that are just checkmates or forks or pins or whatever. But here they're all random, and that's more similar to real games, the random patterns, but you can pick specific tactics and zero in on those. So let's start here. This bishop has just moved and pinned the knight to the king. Now, you want to look for targets when you're trying to solve problems or when you're trying to look for tactics. Checks first, then pieces, you know, that you can attack. So captures, I should say. But this is an easy way to remember. When you're looking at a position on the board or a tactic in a puzzle, you want to look for checks, captures, and threats in that order. So checks first. Do we have anything that can check? That'll give you a hint there. The queen. So the queen can go here, delivering a check, but also forking the king and the bishop at the same time. So that should be the answer to this first problem. So here, and then we just pick off the bishop here. All right, so there you go. Now I'll try and do at least 19 more problems to give you a good set of 20, and then you can go through these taking your time the first time, then you know, go through them again and try and go faster. I better speed it up here. That way, if you're trying to do these in 10 seconds, if you actually watch this, you know, 7 times or whatever, but you can also find your own tactics. All right, here we go. On to the next one. All right, pause at any time if you need more time to think. Okay. So what should we do here? We want to look for checks first. All right, so that should solve the problem for you. Look for the checks. And we have a queen check. So here we go. Queen here, checking the king. And you know, the king is kind of trapped. So the only way to stop it is to block with the queen, and then you can just take that queen. All right, check and capture. So you want simple tactics like this, you know, to do in your set of problems. And that was a 730 rated one. So I would recommend, you know, problems that are rated under 1,000. Even for more experienced players, you can just reinforce your basics by doing a lot of easy problems, you know, and then slowly work your way up. All right, a rook has just moved here, doubling. You know, maybe threatening to pin this rook to the king, but it's our turn and we want to look for ways to attack here. All right, remember, look for those checks first, and that should give you the answer in this problem. All right, pause if you need more time. If not, here we go. Capture. This checks the king. The only thing he can do is run into the corner, and then we can sacrifice our queen. The rook will capture, and our other rook will deliver a mate. So here we go. All right, hopefully you found that one. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, what was that? A knight captured something maybe there? All right. Okay. checks, captures, and threats in that order. So look for the checks first, and hopefully you found the answer here. All right, we have a mate in 1. All right, on to the next one. Okay, a king, or excuse me, a knight has jumped forward here closer to our king. With rook, queen, everything is piling up here. It's looking dangerous. But it is our turn to move. So what can we do in this position? All right. Well, as I said, look for those checks first, and that'll definitely pay off in your own games if you pay attention to the checks. All right, so the queen checks here, and the king, if the king moves into the corner, well then we can just go here and deliver a back rank mate. And if the king moves over here, then we can mate on this square right here. All right, here we go. Check. And the back rank mate it is. And those are something, a pattern that you definitely want to remember, back rank mate patterns, because they do come up a fair amount of times. All right, on to the next problem here. Let's see. What do we have? Look like a pawn capture. Okay. All right, well, checks, captures, and threats in that order. So checks first. Does our rook do anything if it checks up here? The king can just move. So, that leaves the knight. If we go here, it'll be captured. But what about here? Forking. So there we go. We have a fork. And then we can pick off the queen. And then if this piece goes for a possible mate here, or not mate, promotion, well then we can just move down here and stop that. All right. On to the next problem. We have a capture. It's our turn. Our queen is under attack. Ooh, what can we do here? Well, we want to look for those checks. And, checks, captures, and threats. And sometimes the check involves a capture. So what can our queen do? We don't want to capture the rook or will be captured. We could capture the knight with checks. So maybe that's the answer there. All right, and let me know in the comments if you want me to do more of these for you. Should I talk less, so you can concentrate? Am I giving away too much of the answer? I guess you could pause immediately before I begin giving away any answers. But I'm thinking, oh, and also something you want to do is, you might have to take a quick look at the material and make sure it's even. We have 8 pawns versus, 6 here? But our opponent is ahead by a knight. But it looks like we can capture a knight with a check. And then if the bishop blocks, we can just move over and capture a bishop here and go ahead in material. All right, so then we just end up ahead in material. All right, on to the next problem. What do we have here? A queen that was on the edge, centralizing here, helping to protect the king, block this pawn from moving forward to closer to promotion. So what do we want to look for here? Checks, captures, and threats. All right. All right. Okay, some of these may be a little bit trickier for you because especially when they're random, you don't know if you're looking for a checkmate, if you're looking, to capture something, or what you might be trying to accomplish in a random puzzle. But that is closer to a normal chess game. All right. So, the black pawns are heading up the board here as white is coming down the board. So there is something we could try here. We could pick off the queen, forcing the king to capture, and then our pawn can run and promote here. And then it's unstoppable. All right, on to the next problem. And a good reason to do all these chess puzzles is because you see more of the different types of tactics and things that you're trying to accomplish in different chess games. You might not just be able to checkmate. You might have to go for some other advantage, like in that previous puzzle where you were trying to get that pawn promoted. All right. Pawn is pushed forward, attacking ours. What do we do here? We have a rook battery aimed here, but our opponent is protected. We do have a possible check other than with these rooks. So look at all your checks. Sometimes a check that you are overlooking could be a game changer. So definitely, the more you do these chess puzzles, the easy ones, the more you'll just start recognizing simple, like 1 or 2 move check combinations. Even a single check can make all the difference. So what if, instead of just capturing with the rook, what if we bring the bishop in here checking the king? And then the king will have to move, and then we can go after these pieces here. And we'll come ahead a bishop on that. All right. Here we go. On to the next, the next possibility or puzzle here. Here we go. Something else you can do to improve your chess pattern pattern recognition in your chess games is to look at videos, well, like this, that have different puzzles and tactics in it, but you can read books as well that cover all the different types of tactics. There's a Winning Chess series by Yasser Seirawan, Play Winning Chess, but then he has a second book in that series, Winning Chess Tactics by Yasser Seirawan, and that's a really good tactics book. It kind of covers all the basics, or most of them. All right, here we go. We have a rook attacking our queen. So once again, we're looking for checks, and that should give you the answer right there. Hopefully you found this. We're going to run this rook up here. If the king tries to move, our queen can mate here. If the rook tries to block, then we capture and just continue that pattern there. And this is a good pattern to recognize. Already they just quit here because, if they block, we just capture a rook. If the king runs, well, then we just go up here and deliver a mate. A good pattern to just burn into your memory here. Whenever there's like a fianchettoed position where they pushed this pawn forward and created weaknesses in here, and they don't have the bishop in here covering this diagonal. If you have your own bishop or queen firing up through this diagonal, taking advantage of these light squared weaknesses, and then you can put a rook or a queen on the back rank, they work together. All right, on to the next problem. We have capture here with a possible discovered check and, discovered check, and then the queen could help try and mate here, so it looks really dangerous for white. So we need to find a way to turn the tide immediately. And checks, captures, and threats in that order. Look for the check, and hopefully you found this problem. Here we go, a mate with a common pattern of using the knight to back up the queen and deliver a checkmate. On to the next problem. We just had a capture. White is, well, yeah, white is ahead in material. But what would be best here? All right, and something we have to watch out for in this position is that this pawn is about ready to promote here, so that's pretty dangerous. And our king is way out of the action. All right, so look for those checks. We have a rook check, forking the king and the knight here, but the king could move up here, attacking the rook and protecting the knight, and the knight's attacking our bishop, and we may be forced to move our rook over here to prevent this pawn from promoting. But then the king could possibly move back here to try and support this pawn push. So this looks pretty dangerous with all these pawns here. So we want to look at all checks. We have a bishop check possible. So maybe that is a good move. We bring the bishop up here, cover this promotion square, and the king has to move. But then what is the king, or what happens after that? All right, so this is a tricky one. All right, maybe the bishop goes here. The queen is going to do what? The king, or excuse me, the bishop checks the king. The king moves up here to prevent this capture. I don't know. This one does not look good for... These are supposed to be easier, but this one is a little more complicated. All right. Do we capture here, forking? But then what? The king would probably move up here to protect the knight. And if we're forced to go here to cover this pawn, this could be played to protect it. Then what? Oh, and we can't even move over there immediately. Well, this knight could cause some problems. All right. Oh my gosh. These are supposed to be easy problems for you. Maybe you found this one already, but this one turned out to be a little more complicated than I thought. And that's a good reason to do these chess puzzles, because you might find a pattern that you're not familiar with, or some little tactic. And then that might be a good reason, especially like I said, to go over the problems more than once to burn it into your memory. All right. What do we want to do here? Looks like we should just capture with check, is obvious. But then he's just going to move up here. Then what? Do we worry about our bishop if we check and draw the king up even further? I don't know if we're going to be able to stop these pawns, though. So maybe we have to capture immediately with check. The king will move up here, attacking our rook that went here. Then if we go here to stop that pawn from promoting, they're going to go here to protect it. But that does give us time to move our bishop. All right. Oh. Okay, what is going on? Ah, that's funny. All right. My fault here. I don't know what I was looking at. White just moved their bishop, so it's black's turn in this problem, and here I am trying to play white. Okay. You're probably laughing and waiting for me to figure this out. All right. A loss of focus. Okay. The bishop has just moved here. Well, looks like we need to push a pawn forward, because if we go here, there are multiple attacks possible. Do we move our king up and then start moving these pawns? No. All right, let me speed this up. I'm thinking we want to push this forward probably. All right. Oh my gosh. I don't know what I'm thinking in this problem. The pawns are going the other way too. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. Well, this just makes everything a whole lot simpler. We're just going to fork here and take the rook. All right, you're probably laughing at that one. Okay, let's move on here. Sorry to slow everything up. Okay, queen has just moved here. I guess I was trying to explain things and just lost my concentration on that last one. The queen has just moved here doing what? That's something you want to look at. What did your opponent's last move do? What checks, captures, or threats do they have? They could capture here, but you can just take their queen. Oh, but then that could lead to a fork here, of your king and your queen. So that's a danger. All right, so what do we have? Do we even have any checks, captures, or threats? All right. Well, we don't have any checks, other than, well, we could sacrifice our queen. That wouldn't accomplish anything. But this is a weakness here without the bishop to cover these dark squares. So maybe we just go here, forking the rook and the knight. That's a good threat. So that's what I'm thinking. And if they jump down here threatening a mate, that gives us time to capture with check. And then what do we do? So we can, if the knight moves forward wanting to capture here with queen, and after the knight goes here and covers that, that could cause some problems. we have a way to neutralize that? We could block here with this pawn. All right, let's go. Okay, they made it easy for us. We just take the knight and go ahead and material. All right, on to the next problem. A pawn is pushing forward, getting ready to promote here. And what do we want to do? All right. Well, our knight has to keep an eye on that promotion square. You know, if this bishop comes up here, the pawn could push through. Well, another little tricky one. So this is another reason that you really want to do a lot of these puzzles, because the more of these tactics and little combinations you see, the more easily you'll remember them or notice them in your own games. All right, do we push forward, preventing the king from being able to come over and stop this pawn? But once we do that, the bishop could capture, and then if our king captures, he'll be able to pick off this other pawn. So maybe we go here immediately, start creating a threat of this pawn moving forward. If the bishop captures, our king captures, he could move here, but we can come back to protect the pawn. And then what? He would have to make a move. If he pushes his pawn, we just capture. If his king steps away, we can come forward and try and promote. But what if we go here and the king just moves here? Well, then I guess we could move, get both of the pawns running. So that's what I'm thinking. Okay, so they take the easier path. All right, now once they do that, we can just use our knight. Well, the king's going to have to move back, and our king will be able to come forward, and if we need to, the knight could help up here. All right, let's try and do 6 more problems so you get an even 20 in here. Queen has moved up into our position. Look for those checks, captures, and threats. So checks first. Well, we have a bishop could check, but the pawn could block it. So that leaves our queen. Queen could capture the pawn here, trapping the king in the middle of the board. He would have to move here. And then our knight could get into the game. If our knight moves here to check the king again, the king would have to move over here, and then our queen could mate. So hopefully you found that one. Here we go. All right, we have 5 more problems to do here. Okay, a bishop has attacked our queen. What do we do? Well, it looks like we can try and go ahead and material. We have, because sometimes you can't always, go after a checkmate. You have to just grab extra material and use it in the end game. So we have an even number of pawns. Right now our opponent is equal in material, but they have a bishop versus a knight, which is a little bit better when there's pawns on both sides of the board. But we could force a trade of queens with a check. So something like that, check. If the king just moves, then we grab the queen. So the queen would be forced to capture. Our rook would recapture, with a check up here. And then we could just pick off this rook with our knight and go ahead in material. All right. So there you go. Our object was just to go ahead in material. Okay, we have 4 more problems to do. The rook grabs the open file. What are we going to do here? Well, look for the checks, captures, and threats. What is the check that we have that could cause a problem for our opponent? Hopefully you found this. Pause if you need more time. If not, I'm thinking capture with check. The king will be forced into the corner. And then that same pattern of, well, we don't even need to sacrifice the queen. It looks like we can just pick off the rook here. So capture, and then we just grab the rook with the mate. Okay, on to the next one. The king has jumped up here. We're behind in material. But we have a passed pawn here, a protected passed pawn. They have a passed pawn. We probably want to get rid of that queen before they start attacking us all over the board. So how can we do that? Well, whenever pieces are lined up on files or diagonals or ranks, look for possible tactics. So maybe the rook goes here. Because this pawn is coming this way and not attacking that square. So the rook moves over here, attacking the king. The king will have to move. We can pick off the queen. The king will capture that. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 to promotion. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to promotion. So that looks to be the way to go. All right. I would say immediately just start running up the board. Yeah, and then we promote. He didn't even try to promote his pawn. All right, we'll do 2 more problems here. Let's see. And just remember to leave any comments at any time on what you think. If there's something you would like to learn about pattern recognition or something you think I didn't cover, or anything else. All right, the queen has retreated back here to help defend, but we have a back rank mate pattern. So this is a really important pattern. I've actually won a tournament game with a similar pattern to this, where you can move your queen up and check, driving the king away from the open file. And then, sometimes they'll have a rook here and you can just pick off the rook. But here you will have to sacrifice your queen. They'll capture and your rook delivers the mate. So here we go. All right, so let's do the final problem here, number 20. Okay, what do we have? A knight captured here, and the queen is protecting, so the rook doesn't want to capture that. But checks, captures, and threats. Now we could, well, we don't want to capture here. You might be thinking, well, maybe you could block the protection of the queen, but the knight, could still drop back to here and escape. But the checks, look for checks first. I can't emphasize that enough. They can make all the difference. Sometimes your opponent will just overlook a check. All right, well, we don't want to check with a bishop or it'll just, be captured, I guess. But we have this. Check with the queen, and then we can drop back and pick off the knight, with the queen, or the rook can come up. All right, there we go. And then now, because we're under attack, we want to drop back. So there we go. And we're just ahead material. All right, so a recap here, how to improve your pattern recognition in chess. Well, I would say do as many chess puzzles as you can, but the difference is if you just do a whole bunch of puzzles and don't repeat them, or it might be a month or months before you see the same problem again, you're probably going to completely forget that problem, maybe even that pattern or that tactic. So the difference is to go ahead and get a set of problems. You could start with something small like these 20. Do them slowly the first time. Maybe don't even use the clock. Just go through and take all the time you want. And then set a time limit each time you go over them again. And try and do this series about 7 times and do it faster each time. So, take 5 minutes or more the first time. Then go through the problems again and do it in half that time, 2.5 minutes. Then maybe 2 minutes, then 1.5, or 1 minute, and slowly reduce the time. And then the final time you go through, try to solve the problem in like 10 seconds. And hopefully, by going through them so many times, by that 7th time, the patterns and the tactics will be burned into your memory, and you'll see them almost instantly. And it'll help you see these tactics and recognize them more often in your own games. So, I would definitely recommend this. Sometimes it can get tedious, doing puzzles over and over if you start getting tired of them. But it can be very helpful. So there you go. One of the best ways to improve your chess and your pattern recognition. Pick a series of problems. Eventually you might want to pick 100, 500, or even 1,000 problems and just go through them multiple times. Go from 1 to 1,000. Take your time. The next time, go through, maybe give yourself less time and then do it quicker each time until the final time you're just zipping through these problems, with 10 seconds each time or each problem until you reinforce those tactics and patterns into your memory. All right, well, feel free to leave comments, like and subscribe to support the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.